Hi, folks. My name's Chris Payton, and today we're going to be going through Linux command line basics so that we can use Claude Code on the command line. So, first of all, just a little bit of a tour of what we're doing here. So, this is Linux installed on a virtual machine running on my MacBook. And the way that works is there's a program called UTM, which is open source, and that enables you to create virtual machines and run them on your either your Windows or your Mac. Um, if you're on Windows, you might have to use a different a program for managing your virtual machines, like VMware or Parallels. But on Mac, we can use UTM, which is open source. So what you do is you download the image of the system that you want to install. So in this case, it's Ubuntu, and then you load it into UTM and set it up like you're setting up a new computer, and then you kind of get a blank Linux install that you can use. And the reason we're doing this is so that um, when we're using Claude Code, it's not interfering with our own computers because we're kind of just getting started and we want to learn about how it works without risking Claude deleting anything or doing anything funny on our computer. Okay, so what I'll do is get the terminal up. Okay, so this is the terminal. This is where we type the Linux commands in on the command line. It's got a prompt here with your username and the host name of the machine. And then in blue here is where you are at the moment, which directory you're in. You can't really see that very clearly. It's just got a got a tilde at the moment, which means it's your home directory. But if we change into another directory, so if we go into documents, you'll see that it says documents. So we'll go back. Okay, so I just typed in a couple of commands, and what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing as I go along, but we'll just try and dive straight into Claude Code and get it doing something. And then while it's doing something, I'll go back and go through what the commands are that we needed to know in order to get Claude Code working. So we'll go into Documents and we'll make a new directory called Claude, and we'll go into that. And then we'll start Claude Code from that directory. Okay, now we're in Claude Code. So we'll just give it a task, like a kind of normal task that you might ask Claude Code to do when if you're a medical researcher, for example. So Claude is just, everyone's used ChatGPT. It's essentially the same as ChatGPT, only but it just works in the command line. So you can kind of say hi Claude and things like that, and Claude will think a little bit and then respond to you. And you can ask it questions like, what is the capital France? And it will kind of use its, knowledge base to kind of tell you answers to questions. So you can use it in exactly the same way as you'd use ChatGPT. But Claude Code is really an agentic coding system. And that means that it can do much more. It can create websites and store the files on your computer and run it on your computer, which enables you to use it a bit like you would be directing a computer programmer who worked for you. So what we're going to do is we'll build a dashboard, a data dashboard about immunizations in New Zealand. So we just ask Claude what to do in plain English. So we say, "Hi Claude, can you please create a data dashboard um, of immunization data for New Zealand? Search for the open data sets and use HTML, CSS, JavaScript to create a simple web dashboard I can see on my computer in my browser. Um, and so then we just tell it to go away and start working on this. Um, just tell me when it is ready for me to view. Okay, so we'll get Claude working on that. Sometimes it wants to ask you a few questions, but quite often it'll just carry on working. And then we'll create a new terminal window. And I'll just go through some of the tasks. So let's just move that a bit out of the way. So you can see like Claude is going off onto the web. Look, it's looking for its data source at the moment. And this is the kind of agentic system. It can go and do whatever it wants. It can go to and look at websites, it can download things. And that's partly why you want to run it in something like a Linux virtual machine to start with, because it's downloading stuff onto your computer from the internet, and people have started trying to hack people's computers by putting what's called prompt injections, where may have a website, include on a website instructions for Claude to allow you to download viruses and things like that. So anyway, probably won't be doing anything like that. So we'll leave it running, and then I'll just show you some of the commands I used. So one of the first things you might want to do is a command called print working directory, and that shows you where you are in the system. So if you go into the documents and you do it again, it will show that you're in a different directory. CD is the command to change directories, and if you do CD tilde, that will always take you back to your home directory, no matter where you are. So if you get lost, just do CD tilde. And then the normal thing is just to change up into directories. If you press tab, it will auto-complete as long as there's nothing similar. So if you're just doing DO, there are two folders with DO, so you have to do another letter in order for it to auto-complete. And then we've got our Claude directory in there. And it's created, so Claude's created a folder in there called the NZ immunization dashboard. So we can have a look in there. And the other command I'm using is ls. Ls lists the files and directories in the folder that you're in, and see that Claude has created a file called index.html. And what we can do is look at the contents of that file with the command called cat. And that shows us some of the HTML code that Claude has been doing. So we'll go back up. You can go back up to the previous directory with cd dot dot. And if you want to go back up two directories, you put a slash in there to go back up two directories. And now we're back in the home directory again. Sometimes when you do listing files, you want to see hidden files, so what's called dot files. And so you can list all files by doing -a. And if you want to see more information on the files, you can also do -al, which gives you who owns the files and when it was created and what the file permissions are. One command that's quite nice is called clear, and that just clears the screen. So you kind of go back to where you're beginning. So we're just going to have a look and see what Claude has been up to now. So it looks like it's finished. So it said it's ready, open localhost in your browser. And it's got this directory. So we'll say, can you open it, please? So you can just open Firefox and copy and paste it into the browser. But normally you can just get Claude to open it. Sometimes it won't work, so it hasn't worked there because it's dependent on files, things that are installed on your computer. So I'll just copy in that and paste it into there. I know it has loaded up, it just took a little bit of time to do it. Here we go. So this is the dashboard that Claude has created for us. It's opened the debugger as well, which we don't really need. So we'll just get rid of that. So this is quite a nice dashboard. So what it's done is it's gone away and found some open data, um, and then it's used its kind of programming abilities to summarize the data and to make graphs of all the different things. So these are the immunization coverage, and you can see like previous reports, see how things have changed. And yeah, that's a pretty nice dashboard. So we'll shut that down. So one thing we normally like to do is get Claude to run to store a kind of record of what it's done. So we'll say, thanks, Claude. That looks good. Please, can you save a Claude, oops, Claude.md file with a record of what you did for next time. So that means that when you go back into that folder and start Claude again next time, Claude will read this file called claude.md, and that will tell it what's been happening in the session and what it created and what it was trying to do. Okay, so it's saved the Claude MD, um, and it covers the file layout and how it's been stored. And so what you would do now is you can um, exit Claude by doing /exit. And then we can, so it's saved the Claude MD file inside that folder. So if we go inside there, do ls, we can see that Claude MD file. We can do cat claude.md to view it. And then we can see what it's written. So it's kind of got some ideas of things that it could do, like ethnicity breakdown per district, and all sorts of other things. Okay, so okay, so we say let's start Claude up again. And when you start it all up again, it should read the Claude MD file in the folder that it's in. So you can say, what is this project about? Okay, that's good. What are the options for next steps? Okay, ethnicity breakdown, and we'll just say yes, do the ethnicity breakdown. Don't deploy anything yet. We want to test locally. Okay, so we'll get it working away on that. We'll probably spend a little bit of time on it, and I'll just show you a few other commands. So let's just go into documents. We'll go into the Claude folder that we're in. And in here, we'll just make a new file just to kind of show. So make dir was the make directory. So we'll make a test directory, and we can see that with ls, and then we can go cd into test. And then we'll create a text file using nvim, which is a text editor. Okay, so now we'll just say this is it. This is it. Oops. Okay, and we'll just right quit to save that. So NVim is something that you can learn how to use. It doesn't use a mouse, just uses keyboard commands for doing everything. So it takes a bit of learning how to use it, but definitely worthwhile if you're going to be spending a lot of time on the command line. So I'd recommend having a go at learning NVim. NVim is a it's called NeoVim, and it's a newer version of a program called Vim that's been around for a long time, which is a text editor, and that was built after a program called VI, which has been around even longer from systems from the 70s. But there's a thing called Vim Tutor that you can use to learn how to use the keyboard controls in Vim. So I'd recommend doing that. Anyway, so we've now got in our folder a file. So one command you might need to know is remove, which is rm, and that will delete that file. And after you've deleted it, you won't see it in the directory anymore, and you won't be able to get it back because there's no recycle bin in Linux. So once you've removed a file, that's it. If we go up a directory, so cd dot dot, we want to remove the test directory. You can't just do the same command to remove a directory. You can only remove files. But if you do rm dash r, which is recursive, it will remove it. So that removes all the files and folders under the folder from the folder you're typing into. So you can see it's gone there. So yeah, so those are the kind of basic commands. So cd change directory, ls list directory, make dir make directory, rm is to remove. There's another command called to move files. So we'll just create another file. There's actually a quick way of just creating empty files called touch. Um, and touch used to be about just updating the time that's listed on the file of when it was created. Um, but you can also use it just for creating empty files. So that test file is empty. If you did cat test.txt, it would be completely empty. Cat is the program for just listing the contents of a file on the screen, which is good for short files, but not very good for longer files. Anyway, so if you want to move a folder, so we'll create a folder as well, make dir test. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got a folder called test and a file called test.txt. So we'll move test.txt into test. So then if we change directory into test, we can see that it's gone there. You can also use move to rename files. So you can do move test.txt to test2.txt. And then if we look at it, it's called test2, and that works for folders as well. So you can move test to test2, and then you can see it's gone there. So we'll remove that again, rm dash r test2. Okay, and it looks like Claude has finished doing some things. So we'll open the website again and have a look at it. Did we copy that? Let me just check it again. There's slightly different copy commands for Linux than it is on the Mac. So if you're in the command line, you have to do Control Shift C. And then when you're in apps, you just do Control V to paste. If you want to paste in the command line, you have to do Control Shift Paste. Okay, so this looks pretty similar to what we had before, but now it's got this graph of ethnicity. So you can see the different immunization rates by ethnicity in New Zealand, and can see that some groups, Asian is quite good at 8 months for the 95% targets, but other groups are much lower, which might, if you're a public health professional, for example, might help you with kind of targeting your vaccination campaigns or thinking about work that needs to be done. So yeah, so that's how Claude Code works with just an example that researchers might want to do, kind of building a dashboard, but obviously it can do almost anything you want. And you've just got to talk with it in plain English to get it to do what you want. But to get it going, you just need to learn these few commands so that you can see where your files are and things like that, and to get it launched. You can actually in Linux use like a visual file manager as well, but this is not quite so like quick and easy as just using the command line. And also, if you learn the command line, the commands, then you can see what Claude is doing when he's um, doing things and understand which folders that he's working in and that kind of thing. So that's kind of all I wanted to say. I've put together a open access textbook. So if you want to learn a bit more about these commands and how Linux works, you can go online and look at oops, the textbook of Linux, and it's got kind of chapters on the background of Linux, where it comes from, and how to use all of these things that we've been talking about, but goes into much more detail about things. But if you just kind of look at the first few chapters, then you can get a bit more comfortable with how Linux works. And there's also an iPhone app you can download on the App Store to kind of practice commands when you're on the go. And it will test you about your learning. So I quite like using the kind of psychology of learning techniques like spaced repetition and deliberate practice and things like that. So I'll put those into an app so that you can practice and using repetition, you can learn what the commands are when you're just on your phone, and then when you go back to your computer, you'll have remembered them. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for watching.